Welcome to another edition of The Explainer. Today we're taking something that causes a lot of folks a tremendous amount of anxiety and transforming it into absolute confidence. Yep, we're talking about mental math. But look, you can throw away your flashcards and forget that grueling rote memorization you had to do as a kid. Our goal today is to show you that calculating numbers in your head faster than a calculator, it isn't about being born a genius at all. It's entirely about simple, highly learnable patterns.
To prove it, I want you to try solving the seemingly difficult everyday math problem in your head right now. What is 19% of $50? I'll give you a second. Now, if you're trying to do this the old way, carrying decimals, multiplying 19 by 5, shifting zeros around, your brain is probably starting to hurt a little bit. Hold on to that feeling because we're actually going to solve this in about 3 seconds a little later in the explainer.
The reality here is exactly as the renowned mathematician Arthur Benjamin puts it, this is the math they never taught you in school. The people you see performing those wild, complex mental calculations, they really just rely on incredibly practical tricks and foundational shifts in how they look at numbers. It's not some rare genetic gift, it's really just a better toolkit.
So, here's our roadmap for the explainer today. First, we'll cover rewiring your math brain. Second, mastering everyday percentages. Third, multiplication magic tricks. And finally, number 4, advanced mathemagic feats.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, Rewiring Your Math Brain. Rethinking how we calculate from the ground up.
So, to do math quickly in your head, we literally have to change our fundamental approach to numbers. We've got to unlearn some bad habits. In school, you were taught the paper method, right? Which works great on paper. But in your head, it's a total disaster. By the time you've carried the ones and the tens, you've completely forgotten the original numbers. The mental method is all about going left to right. Think about it. We read words from left to right. We pronounce numbers from left to right. So if we want to stop generating answers backward in our heads, we have to calculate from left to right, dealing with the biggest, most significant numbers first.
The next core mindset shift is that you absolutely do not have to tackle ugly numbers head on. Just round them first and adjust the result later. Take 387 plus 456. That's a lot of mental carrying. But what if you just round them up to 400 plus 460? You instantly get 860. Then simply subtract the extra 13 and 4 that you tacked on. 860 minus 17 is 843. This is a technique called compensation. Take 68 plus 57. Steal 2 from the 57 and just give it to the 68. Suddenly, you're just adding 70 and 55, which is effortlessly 125. You're basically acting as your own mental scratch pad here, which totally reduces your cognitive load.
And, this isn't even a modern idea. The ancient system of Vedic mathematics from India used a concept called the vinculum. It's a Sanskrit term for placing a line over a number to indicate its negative. They literally rewired numbers to include negative digits right inside them just to make large additions and subtractions highly efficient. It's all about making the numbers work for you, not the other way around.
All right, moving on to Section 2, Mastering Everyday Percentages. Shortcuts for tips, discounts, and budgets. Now that we've rewired our brains a bit, let's pivot to what is arguably the most practical, high-utility daily math pain point, mastering everyday percentages on the fly. First off, memorizing basic fraction to percentage conversions will instantly speed up your real-world estimations. Percentages are really just fractions of 100, so if you know that 25% is just dividing by 4, or that 20% is just dividing by 5, you bypass a whole ton of unnecessary mental math. So the absolutely crucial point here is how we apply these rules to completely bypass difficult calculations. Remember that opening question? What is 19% of $50? Well, here is the mind-blowing shortcut, the numerator swapping trick. Mathematically speaking, x% of y is exactly the same as y% of x. You can just swap them around, meaning 19% of $50 is the exact same thing as 50% of 19. And what is 50% or half of 19? It's 9.5. So the answer is $9.50. You can literally do that in less than a second.
We can also take basic 10% and 1% blocks to build literally any percentage. Finding 10% is incredibly easy. You just move the decimal point one place to the left. Finding 1%, move it 2 places. And once you have that 10% block, you can scale it however you want. Need 20% for a tip at a restaurant? Find 10% and double it. Need 5%? Find 10% and just cut it in half.
Now this logic works even for something that looks completely terrifying, like calculating 47% of 9,834. Instead of panicking, we just use the splitting percentages technique. Step 1. 47% is really close to 50%. So let's just find 50% by halving 9,834, which gives us 4,917. Step 2. Now we just need to subtract 3% to get down to that 47%. What's 1%? Move the decimal twice. It's 98.34. Step 3, multiply that by 3 to get our 3% chunk, which is 295.02. And finally, step 4. Subtract that 3% from our 50% chunk. 4917 minus 295.02 is 4,621.98. See? By deconstructing the problem, bite-sized logic totally defeats sheer panic.
Next up, Section 3, multiplication magic tricks. Lightning-fast calculations that look like genius.
We're now entering the magic phase, where you can essentially fake being a genius using simple, rigid patterns. Take the multiply by 11 rule. If someone asks you to multiply 32 by 11, do not use traditional math. Just use the pattern. Step 1, take the two digits, 3 and 2. Step 2, add them together. 3 plus 2 is 5. Step 3, place that sum directly in the middle of the original numbers. 3, 5, 2. 352. It is so satisfying. And hey, if the two digits sum to more than 9, say 85 times 11, well, 8 plus 5 is 13, right? You just put the 3 in the middle and carry the 1 over to the 8, making it 935.
You can also save massive amounts of mental energy by transforming difficult multipliers into tens or hundreds. For instance, to multiply any number by 25, just multiply it by 100, which simply means adding 2 zeros, and then divide by 4. Multiplying by 50, just add 2 zeros and divide by 2. And multiplying by 9? Honestly, just multiply the number by 10 and subtract the original number. So 9 times 23 is just 230 minus 23, which gets you 207. This is exactly the kind of stuff that turns a normal person into a math magician. That's the actual term used by experts like Arthur Benjamin. It's someone who seamlessly combines math and magic tricks to perform lightning-quick mental calculations effortlessly. And for our next trick, we're going to look at the ultimate showstopper: squaring a two-digit number ending in 5. Now, if I asked you to calculate 35 squared, so 35 times 35, in your head it sounds totally impossible, right? But the pattern makes it absolute child's play. Here's the rule. Take the first digit and multiply it by the next higher digit in the counting sequence. For 35, the first digit is 3. The next digit up is 4. 3 times 4 is 12. Then you simply attach the number 25 to the end. 1225. Boom. That's it. What about 75 squared? Well, 7 times 8 is 56. Attach 25. 5625. The sheer speed and flawless accuracy of this mental trick will literally leave anyone watching you absolutely speechless.
And that brings us to Section 4, Advanced Math Magic Feats, the human calendar method.
All right, let's empower you with the human calendar method so you can determine the day of the week for any date. Let's figure out what day of the week January 1st, 2030 will fall on. We're going to use a metaphor of a restaurant bill and a tip. Step 1, the last 2 digits of the year act as your bill. So, our bill is $30. Step 2, we need to add a 25% tip. 25% is just a quarter, so half of 30 is 15 and half of 15 is $7.50. We ignore the change and just keep the whole dollar, so our tip is $7. Step 3, add the bill and the tip. $30 plus $7 gives a total of $37. Step 4, subtract the largest multiple of 7 from that total. The multiples of 7 are 0, 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. So the largest multiple we can subtract from 37 is 35. 37 minus 35 leaves us with a remainder of 2.
Now, we take that remainder of 2 and we map it onto a really simple sequence. 1 is Monday, 2 is Tuesday, 3 is Wednesday, and so on. Since our remainder was 2, we know with absolute certainty that January 1st, 2030 will land exactly on a Tuesday.
There is only one tiny caveat to ensure you perform this trick perfectly every single time, and that's the leap year exception. If you are calculating a date in a leap year, like say 2032, you simply subtract 1 from your tip before you add up your final total. That's it. You now possess an unassailable formula to decode the calendar.
So the absolutely crucial point to take away from all of this is that math is a mental muscle, not just a genetic gift. The people doing incredible calculations in their heads aren't using sheer brain power to brutally crunch numbers. They're using creative routing. They're rounding, they're compensating, they're moving decimals around, and they're following structural patterns. Relying on these rules will always beat the myth of innate talent. Which leads us with a final thought to ponder. If mental math, something so many of us feared and assumed was totally locked behind some genius-level intellect, is really just a series of highly learnable patterns, well, what other impossible skills out there could you master by simply changing your approach? Go out there, flex those newfound mental muscles, and start looking for the patterns. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.